Welcome to Finding Faith, the space we come to share stories of encounter, ask questions, and share in the lived experience of others. As you listen to the stories of our interview guests, I ask that you consider the courage it takes to stand before your peers and share your experience of faith for the benefit of another. My name is Jessie Bennett, and this is the 32nd episode of Finding Faith. So today we have with us Brandon Coomes. Brandon, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello, my name is Brandon Coomes. I'm a cradle Catholic, and I've always considered myself a simple country boy. I've always loved to be outside, whether it be fishing, hunting, hiking, or just being around nature. I don't consider myself the most exciting person to be around, but I always try to be there if you need me. I'm married to my wonderful wife, Samantha, and we have been blessed with 3 beautiful children, Layden, Lida, and Elsie. I grew up here in Whitesville, and I attended St. Mary's and Trinity High School, 1st through 12th grade. I'm very grateful my parents sent me to St. Mary's and Trinity. Growing up, my parents taught me the value of hard work and always being generous to those in need. My mama was a great inspiration and taught me how important prayer is. Whether it be attending one of my grandparents' prayer meetings or watching Mom do the sign of the cross in front of a Catholic church or Catholic cemetery, I've always been grateful that God gave me a mother that has such great faith. After high school, I went to college at Murray State University, where I earned a Bachelor in Science in Environmental Engineering Technology, and I currently work for Boardwalk Pipeline Partners as an environmental specialist.
Thank you very much. And Brandon is going to share with us his story of encountering God. So Brandon, why don't you share your story with us?
Through my whole life, I've always felt like God has been there, directing me where to go. I may have not always listened to his calling at first, but eventually he steers me in the right direction. One of my earliest profound experiences where I encountered God was in Falmouth, Kentucky. I believe I was 9 or 10 at the time. I remember I went to a farm with my grandma and some of my aunts. We took a bus and it was a pretty long trip. I didn't know it at the time, but we rode to a farm known as Our Lady's Farm in Falmouth, Kentucky. This is where the Virgin Mary appeared to a woman named Sandy in the summer of 1993. Our Lady asked Sandy to build a grotto there at the farm. She asked Sandy to go to the farm every 8th day of the month starting in January 1994. She asked Sandy to come there around 2 p.m. and invite others to join her in prayer. We must have visited the farm one of the times in 1994. I remember being at the farm grounds with a bunch of other people. It was a beautiful, warm, sunny day. We were all on top of a long flat hill, and on the end of the hill, there was a large white statue of the Virgin Mary. I remember us all praying, and some people were having very personal encounters with God. And before we left, each one of us went to the statue of Mary and touched her feet. But what really impacted me the most was what actually happened after we left. On the bus ride home, we were watching a small TV in the bus, which was broadcasting a close-up of the statue of the Virgin Mary's face. As we were watching the TV, we all witnessed Mary's eyes, lids closed, and tears started running down her face. I was shocked. What a miracle. How can a statue move or cry? I will never forget that moment in my life. I've learned since our visit, a grotto was built for the statue of the Virgin Mary, and also a chapel. The Chapel of the Good Shepherd was built. Another reason I know God has always been there is because I feel he led me to my wife, Samantha. The very first time we met was in college, and it was at the Murray State St. Pius X Newman House event. I think we were having spaghetti lunch at the time. Even though I didn't think we spoke to each other during that time, I knew she was special. At the time, I was not interested in dating at all because I just wanted to focus on college and getting my degree. Come to find out, Sam and I lived in the same dorm. We'd run into each other quite a bit, especially in our dorm rec room where we play pool. The rec room was basically on the other side of the hall from my room. I remember she would always give me a hard time about my car because it was a Mustang, but it only had the small, wimpy V6 motor. Sam was the only girl I knew that listened to rock music bands like Metallica, as well as had all their albums. I thought that was really cool because I was a big Metallica fan, and the other rock bands she listened to also. Something really drew me to Sam, and I really wanted to get to know her better. Also, come to find out, we had a mutual friend, which I thought was really neat, since Sam was from Henderson, and we never met until college. We started dating our freshman year of college. Actually, our first date was on Valentine's Day. There are many reasons why I think God was calling me to marry Samantha. First of all, we fit together very well, even though we are two very different people. I think this is why we work together so well. How boring would it be if we had all the same interests and never pushed each other to try new things? Sam would also pray with me, and we'd go to confession together, which I thought was awesome. Also, Sam was not afraid to defend her faith. I remember she had a Bible full with these tabs and notes that she would always reference when talking apologetics with her Protestant friends. A lot of our time dating was a long-distance relationship. It was hard being away from Sam for so long, but we were able to get through this time, and I thank God for that. We have now been married for almost 12 years and have been together for 17 years. It amazes me that God just has a way of having all the pieces in my life come together. And of course, Sam was a very important piece. I would be lost without her. Honestly, that's not a metaphor. I have the worst sense of direction, and Sam just has this innate ability to get to her destination without looking at a map or GPS. She's a wonderful wife and a terrific mother. Again, God has always been there, and He led me to my wife, Samantha. Another reason I know God has always been there was because of the birth of my son, Layden. Not that Layden is more important than my daughters, but his birth was totally different than theirs. Layden was our first child, and his birth was a very traumatic experience. First of all, we didn't have a great doctor. He was very unkind and kept pressuring Sam to induce labor, even though Sam wanted a more natural birth. We felt like he just wanted to get us out of the living room as fast as he could. After a few hours, we let the doctor induce birth because Sam's labor wasn't progressing. While in labor, every time Samantha had a contraction, Layden's oxygen level would take a serious dive. We were very worried, and the doctors ended up having to do an emergency cesarean. They rushed Sam to the surgery room and didn't even take the time to cover her up. Sam and I could basically see the whole surgery. It ended up being a good thing that they did a C-section because Layden's umbilical was wrapped around his arm and neck, thus the reason his oxygen would get so low. There's no way Layden could have been born without the C-section. It was very hard because we couldn't touch or hold Layden for the first 2 hours because he had such a traumatic birth. I actually got to hold Layden first, and it was one of my best experiences I've ever felt. I can't believe my wife and I made this precious baby boy and felt proud to be his father. I thank God that Layden was born a healthy baby and Samantha was able to make a full recovery from the C-section. I feel like I've always been blessed, and I owe it all to God. I'd be nothing without Him. I've always had a good, steady job, good health, and people who love me. Because of everything God has given me, I'm trying to do more to give back, especially to the parish. A couple of years ago, I started lecturing at Mass. This was a big challenge to me at first because I'm an extreme introvert, and speaking in front of large groups was very hard for me. But I want to do something for the parish that would challenge me. It doesn't really bother me much now, and now that I've read a few times at Mass, and I actually enjoy it. Also, last year, Father Brian asked my wife and I if we wanted to co-chair the parish's family and social life committee. We said yes, and I'm hoping we can really help the parish through this committee. We're really short on members right now and are looking for people to join from different stages in life. So if anybody's interested in doing more with the parish, please consider joining the family and social life committee. To that point, I encourage everyone to get involved with the parish. God has given everyone talents, and I challenge people to get more involved with the church.
Thank you so much, Brandon, for sharing your story with us. If it's okay, I've just got a couple questions for you.
Sounds great.
Okay, so I guess the first thing I want to talk about was this experience that you had of seeing Mary close her eyes and tears running down her face in this statue from Falmouth, Kentucky. You said everybody, so it was not just you that saw this miracle. It was all the people that were with you?
Yes. Everyone on the bus was watching the screen. And yeah, everyone saw her close her eyes, and there was lots of, wow and hoots, and everyone just thought it was crazy that a statue was closing its eyes.
So, as far as you, how did this miracle or witnessing this miracle impact your faith?
As a young child, you get your faith from your parents, but I think this just helped reinforce the mystery and behind my faith. I mean, I don't know if other religions have miracles and stuff, but the fact that a blessed statue of the Virgin Mary, closed her eyes and weep physical tears was just astonishing to me. And I mean, how can you deny God when something like that happens in front of you? And I know there's been other times in history where statues of the Blessed Mary have wept, but to see that, I wasn't physically there, but to be so close to it, it was crazy. And I'm surprised it's not more, I guess, broadcasted that happened, but I saw it. It happened.
So you said that there's been a church, a grotto, and a Blessed Sacrament chapel that's been built in that spot.
Yes.
So is this like a pilgrimage place that people can go to?
Yes. So I wish I could remember the parish it's in, but it's nearby a parish, and now it's just kind of and they do mass at the chapel, and they built a huge stone grotto around the Blessed Mary. And you can, if you Google Falmouth, Kentucky, it'll come up.
Have you ever been back there or thought about going back there?
It's funny, when I was going through the story, I was talking to my grandma about it because I went with her the first time, and she's actually was thinking about going back this year. And if she does, I want to go back with her and visit the place again.
Yeah, very cool. What about, did this stir in you any questions about the Blessed Virgin Mary or create any kind of relationship with her in your faith life?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like a lot of times I go to Mary to get to Jesus, and I'm wondering if this had something to do with it, because I find myself most of the time when I'm going to Jesus, I go through Mary, mm-hmm. or I start with Mary to get to Jesus. And I think this had a big part to do with that.
Yeah, kind of help develop this relationship with her.
Yes.
And create like a closeness.
Yes. Absolutely.
In your faith to her or to the person of Mary.
Yeah.
Very cool. It's so crazy, just like thinking about this, the witnessing of this miracle.
Yeah, you don't see stuff like that every day. And like I said, I wish we could have saw it in person, but just the fact that we were just there and seeing on the little TV and the bus was still, like I said, it was amazing to me, and I'll never forget it.
So, you've talked a little bit about Sam, your wife, and meeting her and how she was an incredible blessing in your life from God. And, you mentioned that while y'all were dating, that you and her would pray together, you would go to confession together, and that she would defend her faith. And so, or that you got to witness her defend her faith to her Protestant friends. So I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit more about y'all's dating relationship and what that looked like.
Yeah. So I guess I could say I was very picky in the girl I wanted to date. I really didn't date a whole lot in high school or college. And because I was picky, and I wanted, if I was going to date somebody, I wasn't going to start the process if I knew that, she wasn't, strong in her faith. And, Sam was, we would say the rosary together, at St. Pius X there in Murray. Like I said, I always thought it was cool that she carried around a book with all all the different pages tabbed. And she would argue with her Protestant friends. She's like, "No, you're not right. This is what it says, and this is how the church interpreted this passage or whatever." And that meant a lot to me that she was strong in her faith and would go to confession with me, would pray to me, because that was one of the biggest things I was looking for in a potential wife. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that really meant a lot to me.
So I guess that was on she checked that box on your like non-negotiable list of must be Catholic, must be strongly Catholic.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Very good. So whose idea was it to begin praying together?
I would say it's probably mutual. I don't think either one of us, swayed each other either way. We just one day it's like, hey, we should pray together, and we do. So.
And that's so phenomenal and something that's incredibly important in a relationship. And I think the part that dumbfounds me about this is that you guys would have been freshmen in high school or in college at the time.
We were freshmen in college.
So like 18, 19-year-olds to have this commitment to their faith that you guys wanted to pray together.
Yeah.
So I guess the follow-up question to that is, do you still pray together?
Yes, of course, with life being as hectic as it is now, I wish we would do it more. My wife, she's a gymnastics teacher and she works late. So a lot of times I'm praying with the kids and I have to put them to bed before she gets home. We still try to pray together, but it's not as frequent as we'd like. And that's something we should strive to work on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's so important in not just a dating relationship, but in a marriage, setting up that foundation for the two of you to have this strong foundation in your faith, that not only do I pray and I have this relationship with God, but we have this relationship with God. That thinking of that verse where it talks about like a 3-ply cord is difficult, not easy to break.
Yeah.
It's a common one that you hear at weddings, like you, me, and God. And so really when you pray together, it brings God into that relationship and it makes it so much stronger.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you guys pray together now, what does that look like for you?
Normally we'll pray before we go to bed, and we'll just both just sit at the bed and we'll just say some prayers together. And I'd like to, we're trying to strive to pray more, longer prayers with the family, like the rosary, but trying to get little ones to sit through a whole rosary is tough. But
how old are your kids?
So my kids are Layden is 11, Lida is 7, and Elsie just turned 3.
Oh, so, yeah. Goodness. And you said that you pray with them. So, what are you both doing to help pass on your faith and instill faith in your kids?
Well, like I said, my mom was a big inspiration for me growing up. Like I said, prayer was really important to her, and she definitely passed that down to me, and I want to pass that down to my kids. So, I try to pray with them every night, especially during grace, the meals, and then every morning we pray on the way to school. So I just want to instill in them what my mom instilled in me to keep that going.
Yeah, very good. And it can be so tough to teach little ones to pray. Like you said, especially when you're wanting to do like prayers like the rosary and teach them some of these traditions that we have. And it can be a challenge. You said your youngest is 3.
Yeah.
They do not like sitting for.
Yeah,
the focus does not last very long. But I think as parents, as we're teaching our children, and I'm not saying that you guys don't, but it's important to remember that to as parents, it's important for us to recognize the level that our children are at and set them up for success when we're teaching them about prayer and God and our faith, so that when we pray with them, it's not reasonable to expect a 3-year-old to sit through an entire rosary, but it is reasonable to expect them to sit there and pray with you for a decade.
Yeah.
They might get a little squirmy towards the end, but they can generally do that, or at least half of one.
Yeah.
So, but they're such sponges, and they soak that in. Like you said, you learn that from your mom, which is watching her.
Absolutely.
And that's really how they learn, is watching us and picking up what we do and and just soaking in their faith from their parents.
Yeah.
You mentioned that another reason you are certain about the presence of God in your life is the birth of your son, Layden. And you mentioned how challenging and difficult of a birth that was for you and for Samantha.
Yeah.
And for Layden, it sounds like. Could you elaborate more what you mean by, seeing God's hand in this experience of your son's birth?
Yeah. So, this was a really scary, traumatic experience for both Samantha and I. And I remember when we arrived at the hospital for, to get her checked in and everything, she's like, I'm going to leave here with the C-section as much as he's pushing me to, the doctor's pushing me to induce labor and all this. And yeah, that's why it happened. But for such a traumatic and scary experience, I thank God that we have, they can do cesareans, because there's no way Layden would have been, born with a regular birth, because his umbilical was wrapped everywhere.
Yeah.
And it shows me how God, gives us the tools and things to overcome stuff like this. And it could have been such a worse experience. Layden could have died. Mm. And the fact that he came out, healthy because of the C-section, because of God, I thank God every day that, it wasn't worse, and that Sam and both Layden came out healthy and fine.
Yeah. Well, that those interventions were possible.
Exactly.
And as traumatic as it is, and how difficult it can be when you have a not great doctor. I've spoken to more than one woman who's had a terrible experience with birth because they had a doctor who was pressuring them, or just had terrible bedside manner, but that's a whole different story. But had he not done that, had y'all been able to succeed at having a more natural birth, the outcomes may not have been the same.
Yeah. Say if we try to do a home birth or something like that, it would have been a disaster. So yeah.
So you mentioned here towards the end of your story that you wanted to give back, especially to the parish, give back to God. And I was just wondering, what is it in you that makes you want to give back to the parish?
Well, I feel like today there's just a huge lack of commitment. And I hate to say this, especially with my generation and generations coming, more and more people are leaving the church, or people just don't seem to me committed to anything really. And I want to change that. I want to show that, I'm here for the parish. I'm committed, and I want to be different than what I'm seeing, and show that commitment and be there when the parish or people need me. 'Cause I just don't see that much of that anymore.
Mm. So you said that when you first began lecturing, that it was a challenge for you because you were an introvert. And so I'm curious, how did you land on lecturing?
Well, I knew it'd be really difficult for me, and I'm trying to get better at public speaking anyway. So I thought that would be a kind of a good fit, and I wanted something that would really, really challenge me, and talk in front of big groups of people used to really scare me. So now I feel a lot more used to it and a lot more assured of myself, and I'm glad I did it. And also, again, my mom's a lector, and she's been a great inspiration. And my wife is now a lector. Samantha's a lector, and she's a lot better than I am. She's very, very. She reads all the time, so I think it came natural to her. But she just has a great speaking voice, and I love to hear her lecture at church.
Yeah. And you also mentioned that you and Sam are part of the Family and Social Life Committee.
Yes.
Father volunteered you.
Yes.
And I was just curious. So tell me a little bit about the committee that you're on, and what do y'all do?
Yeah. So my wife and I, Samantha and I, were co-chairs of the Family and Social Life Committee. And we look at to make sure family is part of all aspects of the parish, whether it be church or picnic or whatever, that the family's part of it, but not only family, that all different walks of life are included in things at the parish. So whether, if you're divorced, widower, widow, just all different, single life, that all these different walks of life, that we are taking them into account with the different things going on at the parish. So in the nutshell, that's the way I would put it.
Yeah. And what are some of the things that this committee does in the parish?
Well, unfortunately, COVID has really hampered how much we can do, as it has with lots of things. But, in the past, the Family and Social Life oversaw the donut Sundays. So, bringing the people together after Mass for coffee and donuts. Now we're looking into helping implement the small groups initiatives in St. Mary's evangelization plan. So we're looking forward to reaching that goal and helping with that initiatives. And then just the other things that Father feels like there's a need for in the parish. We're there to help answer that need.
Very good. And so I just have one last question for you. You've mentioned a couple of times your mom and how she's been an inspiration in your faith. I was wondering, what about her has been such an inspiration to you? And are there other people or saints or individuals who have really helped to bolster your faith?
So with Mom, definitely her prayer life. It's funny, anytime, she loses something, she prays to St. Anthony. And I know she got that from her parents, Grandma and Grandpa. And like I said, growing up, we would go to prayer meetings at Grandma and Grandpa's with a bunch of different people, and we'd say the rosary together. And, they took prayer very seriously, and they still do. And Grandma and Grandpa, I think now they go to Mass every day. Mom, she does, adoration. She's one of the people who make sure we can do the perpetual adoration. So prayer and faith life is very important to her, and she definitely passed that down to me.
All right. Well, thank you, Brandon, so much for sharing your story with us and taking time out of your day to come here and record with me.
It was my great pleasure, and I appreciate you asking me.
And thank you all for listening here today. If you are interested in hearing more stories of finding faith and encountering, tune in next week to hear from our next guest. If you have any questions, need someone to journey with, or would be interested in sharing your story, please contact me at findingfaith123@gmail.com.